Have you ever held onto something so tightly, an argument, a grudge, a mistake, that it felt like it was holding onto you instead? We've all been there. We convince ourselves that letting go means giving up, that moving on means losing. But what if letting go isn't a sign of weakness? What if it's actually the first step toward real power? It's one of the quietest fears we carry, that if we move on, it means it never mattered. That if we release the memory or stop talking about the hurt, we're somehow dishonoring the weight it once held in our lives. Think about it. When we go through something painful, especially something that shakes us deeply, we create a story around it. That story becomes part of how we define ourselves. I went through this, we say, this happened to me. And in some strange way, that story starts to anchor us. It's not just the event, we hold on to the emotion attached to it. The anger, the disappointment, the guilt, the need for justice, for explanation. Letting go feels like letting it disappear, like saying it wasn't real, like saying it didn't affect us, but we cling to it because it gave us something. Even if it was painful, it had meaning. A friendship that ended taught us something. A betrayal shaped how we see trust. A failure rewired how we approach risk. Letting go can feel like erasing the lesson, or worse, pretending the experience didn't matter as much as it did. We also fear being misunderstood. We worry that if we let go, others might not take it seriously, that they'll think we were unaffected, unbothered, or indifferent, and so we keep the wound open, not because we want to, but because we're afraid that closing it means forgetting it. We assume that holding on preserves the importance of the moment, that as long as we keep the memory sharp and the emotion alive, it stays relevant, it stays meaningful, it keeps us connected to what was. And so we grip tightly, not always out of bitterness, but sometimes out of reverence, sometimes out of fear, sometimes because we simply don't know who we are without that version of the story. For most of our lives, we've been conditioned to chase the idea of winning, being right, having the last word, proving a point. We think if we can just convince the other person to see it our way, if we can gather enough evidence, stack up enough logic, say the perfect thing at the perfect time, we'll win. And when we win, we think peace will follow. But have you ever noticed how hollow that victory can feel? You may walk away from the argument having won, but your chest still feels tight. The silence afterwards still echoes. The relationship still feels fractured. Because in our obsession with being right, we forget what we truly wanted in the first place: to be heard, to be seen, to be understood. Understanding doesn't require agreement. It requires presence. It means sitting in discomfort without rushing to fix it. It means asking questions, not to trap someone in contradiction, but to actually learn how they got to where they are, what they felt, what they feared, what they were trying to protect. We often enter conflict like a courtroom, each side with their evidence, their witnesses, their closing arguments. But life isn't a trial, and the people we care about aren't on the witness stand. Understanding asks us to step out of that role, to stop prosecuting and start listening. It also means understanding yourself, knowing what's underneath your own anger, what's fueling your need to be right. Sometimes it's pride. Sometimes it's an old wound. Sometimes it's fear that if you give an inch, you'll be walked over again. But peace isn't a trophy. It's not handed out when someone finally concedes. It's not the reward for domination. Peace is what happens when both people feel safe enough to put down their armor, when they can sit across from each other and say, I may not fully agree with you, but I want to understand you. It requires patience. It requires humility. It requires being more committed to the relationship than to the scoreboard. And that's hard, especially when your voice has been silenced in the past, especially when you've been misunderstood for so long that your only instinct is to defend. But when you stop trying to win the moment, and instead try to understand the human being in front of you, even if it's you in the mirror, that's when the walls start to lower. That's when the heat begins to fade. That's when the grip on needing to be right starts to loosen. We like to think we're moving on just because we're busy. We fill our calendars, chase new goals, surround ourselves with noise and motion. And yet, deep down, we know we're still stuck. Not because we aren't trying, but because we're dragging things we were never meant to carry this far. The past has a strange way of following us, not always in obvious ways. Sometimes it lingers in the way we guess ourselves, in the way we hesitate before trusting someone new. It shows up in how quickly we shut down when things get uncomfortable, how we expect the worst even when life gives us no reason to. It's not always the memory that weighs us down, it's the meaning we've attached to it. We drag yesterday in the form of guilt we haven't forgiven ourselves for. Mistakes that keep replaying in our minds like a film we can't turn off. We think if we hold onto the regret long enough, maybe we'll finally fix what's already broken. But regret doesn't fix the past, it just tightens its grip. We also carry resentment, quietly. Sometimes we don't even admit it to ourselves, but it's there. In the stories we keep retelling, in the bitterness behind our jokes, in the way we rehearse what we should have said. Resentment doesn't move in loud, it settles in slowly. It becomes the lens we see the world through, making everything feel just a little heavier than it should. And then there's fear. Fear of repeating what hurt us. Fear of making the same wrong turn. So we try to control everything. We overthink. We plan. We keep people at a distance. We tell ourselves we're just being careful, just being wise. But really, we're just hauling yesterday's fear into today's decisions. The truth is, forward motion isn't just about what you're running toward. It's about what you're willing to leave behind. And that's not easy, because the past is familiar. Even when it hurts, it's known. And the unknown, as full of hope as it might be, is still uncertain. We hold on to old identities, too, versions of ourselves shaped by moments we never asked for. Maybe we were once the one who got left behind, the one who failed, the one who was overlooked. And even though life is offering us something different now, we're still walking through the world wearing the name tags from seasons that ended long ago. We say we want growth, but growth requires space. And there's only so much room in your hands, your heart, your mind. If they're full of yesterday, where does today fit? We often imagine letting go as this single, dramatic moment. A goodbye text, a deleted photo, a box packed up and put away. And while those actions can be symbolic, they're not the real work. Because you can delete the message and still check if they're online. You can throw something away and still carry it in your chest. The real work of letting go happens in the mind. Quietly, repeatedly. It's not one decision made in a moment of courage. It's a decision made again and again, every time the past tries to pull you back in. It's choosing not to spiral into the same old thought loop when the memory resurfaces. It's choosing not to pick at the wound every time you feel uncertain or lonely. Letting go is not forgetting. It's learning to stop giving the past permission to dictate how you feel today. It's also about surrender, not to the person or the situation, but to the reality that some things are out of your control. That closure may never come in the way you want. That apologies might never be said. That understanding might always be just out of reach. And still, you release your need to hold on. And then there's the part that no one talks about, the internal resistance. The parts of you that don't want to let go because they're still holding out hope. Maybe they're hoping for a different ending. Maybe they're hoping for validation. Maybe they're hoping that if they hold on just a little longer, the pain will make sense. Letting go means accepting that healing may not come with explanations. That sometimes the most honest answer you'll ever get is silence, and yet you choose to make peace with it anyway. It's about reframing. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you begin asking, "What can I take from this that helps me grow?" You stop waiting for someone else to fix what hurt you. You stop believing that closure is something only others can give you. It's also a shift in self-worth, because part of why we cling is because we think we're losing a piece of our identity if we let go. We think we need the connection, the memory, the explanation to feel whole, but letting go, in its truest form, means recognizing that you are not defined by what happened, you are defined by how you rise from it. The mindset isn't about detachment or pretending you don't care. It's not about becoming numb. It's about choosing to care differently, choosing to care about your peace more than your pride, choosing to invest in your future more than you cling to your past. And it requires self-awareness, because sometimes what we think we've let go of, we've only buried. It's still shaping how we love, how we trust, how we show up in the world. Letting go as a mindset means being honest with yourself when those old patterns start to creep back in. It means catching them, not with judgment but with gentleness, and reminding yourself that you've chosen a different path. When we imagine strong leadership, we often picture decisiveness, control, unwavering presence. And while those traits matter, true strength in leadership isn't found in how tightly someone holds on. It's revealed in how courageously they let go. Clinging is rooted in fear, the fear of losing influence, the fear of becoming irrelevant, the fear of being misunderstood or left behind. Leaders who cling operate from a mindset of scarcity. They believe that if they loosen their grip, something valuable will slip through their fingers. So they micromanage, they control. They resist change, not because they don't see the need for it, but because they're afraid of what it might cost them. But the most impactful leaders are the ones who understand that growth requires space. Space for others to rise, space for new ideas to form, space for failure, learning, and independence. And that space can only exist when the leader steps back, not out of apathy, but out of trust. They release control because they trust the people they've poured into. They release the need to be the loudest voice in the room because they've created a culture where others feel safe to speak. They release their ego not because they don't have one, but because they know their mission is bigger than their need to be right. And it's not just about teams or companies. The same truth applies to internal leadership, the way we lead ourselves. Strong self-leadership means letting go of outdated identities, of roles we've outgrown, of stories that once served us but now hold us back. It means recognizing that staying stuck in what was familiar is often more dangerous than stepping into the unknown. Leaders who cling tend to wear burnout like a badge of honor. They think holding everything together by themselves proves their worth. But real strength is found in sustainability, in building something that works even when you're not in the room, something that can thrive beyond your shadow. That only happens when you empower others to lead too. And releasing isn't passive, it's active. It takes intentionality to pause and ask, is this still mine to carry? Am I standing in the way? Am I clinging to a method that used to work simply because I'm afraid to try something new? It also takes humility, because releasing means admitting that you don't have all the answers, that you don't need to, that sometimes someone else's perspective, someone else's energy, someone else's vision might take things further than you ever could alone. We tend to associate control with security and releasing with risk. But in leadership, the opposite is often true. The more you cling, the more you become the bottleneck. The more you release, the more you create momentum. Releasing also applies to vision. Strong leaders are willing to let go of ideas that once inspired them because they recognize the mission hasn't changed, but the world has. They don't idolize the past. They don't make sacred what was only ever meant to be temporary. They hold everything with open hands, knowing that their role isn't to preserve what's comfortable, it's to move toward what's possible. Letting go isn't a moment, it's a journey, one that asks more of us than we realize. It asks us to choose understanding over pride, to trade the comfort of familiarity for the uncertainty of freedom. It asks us to stop proving and start healing. We don't let go because we're weak. We let go because we're finally strong enough to carry peace instead of pain. Whether it's a grudge, a failure, a version of yourself you no longer recognize, or a role you've outgrown, releasing it doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to live forward, not backward, because real growth isn't about holding on tighter. It's about loosening the grip on what was, on what hurt, on what no longer serves, and making space for what's next. Peace isn't found in the noise of proving something. It's found in the quiet decision to no longer let the past define how you show up today. So when you're ready, let it go, not in anger, not in haste, but peacefully. That's where the real strength lies.